This is JS Party, your weekly celebration of JavaScript and the web. For more like this, check out our other pods. You can collect them all at changelog.com. Thanks to our partners at Fly.io, launch your app close to your users for peak performance. Fly makes it easy. Learn how at Fly.io. Okay, it's party time, y'all.
Hello, JS Party listeners. We are back with another fun show today, and I'm so excited about today's show because we're talking about one of my favorite topics, which is like low-level web primitives, but also like functional, useful ones. And so we'll get into that in just a second, but I'm also excited because this is my first show co-hosting with Jessica. Hello, welcome, Jessica.
Hello. I'm really excited to talk about design systems.
Yes, absolutely. And how are you doing today?
I'm okay. I'm actually sick, but relatively okay. I'm coming down from it.
Okay, yeah, it is the season here, springtime in the Northeast. But our guest today is none other than Corey LaVisca, who's the creator of this pretty prolific library called Shoelace. Shoelace is a forward-thinking library of web components. We'll learn all about it. And it's also evolving into it's like going through like a metamorphosis plusing into kind of something called Web Awesome, which is going to be part of the Font Awesome family. Many of you know Font Awesome. It's been around a long time. It's awesome tools, services, all the things. And so Shoelace is joining or has joined the Font Awesome family and is also evolving to kind of be a higher order design system. So we're going to learn about all of that today. But first, we're going to introduce our guest, Corey. Hello, Corey. Welcome to JS Party. First time, right?
First time. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
We're excited. And so can you, for our listeners who might not be familiar with you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
About me? Oh, I wasn't prepared for that.
About
I was
you.
talk about Shoelace.
I know.
You're involved.
Yeah.
No, well, we could talk about New Hampshire, which is where you're from.
Yeah.
Which is a special place for me as a Massachusetts person. I'm fascinated by New Hampshire.
I'm probably one of the very few people in the world who live in New Hampshire and work in tech, at least in my experience.
Oh, wow.
I think there's like one other person I've met in New Hampshire that's like, yeah, I work in tech too. I'm like, oh, really? We should be friends.
Well, no, there are people who work there. They just commute into Massachusetts for work. I feel like, there's definitely a huge commuter.
Yeah.
It's true.
There's a commuter pool of people.
Yeah. That's unfortunate that they have to go down there to do that.
Oh my God. All right. So the beef begins. Okay, y'all. So we're
starting
gonna
strong.
Quick aside. New Hampshire, the motto of New Hampshire is live free or die. Car insurance is optional. It's no state sales tax. So everyone buys their expensive MacBooks in New Hampshire and saves money on that. I mean, New Hampshire is, I don't know. It's, an interesting place.
We put liquor stores on the highway just to accommodate you guys. So
that's right.
Enjoy.
That's right.
Every camping trip.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyways, oh gosh.
Wait, is this about New England or is this about? Oh,
we should talk about the web at some point. Anyways, no, back to you, Jessica. You okay? Your last dig at New Hampshire, and then back to Corey.
Oh, I was going to ask, have you ever read the book "A Libertarian Walks into a Bear"?
I haven't.
It's about a Reddit group taking over a city in New Hampshire. It's a true story.
Oh, I am familiar with that, but I haven't read the book. But yeah, that was lame. That was lame. People shouldn't try to take over states like that.
Cities. Yeah, cities.
I think people should also generally have car insurance. But,
Yeah, they didn't have a fire department, and that became a problem. That was the moral of the story.
Yeah. Anyways, so Corey, about you.
About me. Well, I'm from New Hampshire. Did we mention that at all? So I've been working in software since the early 2000s. Man, I just aged myself really badly there, which feels like forever ago. And early on in my career, I kind of just made a weird decision. Like I love the web. I loved what it was all about. Build something and you could access from anywhere. And I just sort of bet like all of my chips on, I'm just going to work on the web. I never got into like, Mac OS development or Windows development. I just stayed everything on the web. And so early in my career, I got tied into the list apart kind of, group of folks who were, very much like pro platform web standards. We went through the browser wars, and web standards were always like this thing that just made so much sense. And, fast forward to modern times here, and web standards is something that I still believe a lot in. And that's sort of where I guess that's a good segue into what we're going to be talking about, because, Shoelace and now WebAwesome, this project is really about web standards and the continuation of that journey. So I feel like I'm rambling.
No, definitely not. No ramble. I mean, it's my kind of ramble, but also just, I think making it, because building blocks on the web are like not useful on their own, right? But it's like, okay, now when you compose a set of things together and you can do a thing, all of a sudden there's a utility aspect to this, right? And for me, what you've created with Shoelace is this incredible utility of like low level common behaviors that most people who are writing web apps need, right? Like all the things you would think would be in a design system, right? But you've used web components to create those low-level primitives, which means that, these can be consumed by people who are just doing vanilla JS, people who are using React, who are using Vue, who are using Angular, using Solid, you name it. Like you have all these, just all these consumers. And I think that was kind of the intent for web components, right? Is to be these low-level baseline primitives. So with that said, could you tell us a little bit about like what inspired you to create Shoelace?
Yeah. So if we rewind to the very first iteration of Shoelace, it wasn't anything like it looks like today. It was basically a replacement for Bootstrap. And back in the day, if you remember, Bootstrap was, everyone was using it. Everything looked like Bootstrap, and it was everywhere. It was ubiquitous. And the thing I noticed was most people were using it from the CDN. And if you wanted to customize things, there was a Sass version, and you could change like one or two variables, and it was like, oh, great, everything. But nobody did that for some reason. People were afraid of build steps, and so they download it from the CDS or just copy and paste those script tags and link tags, and then they would go and create like their own style sheet .css and just start overriding everything. And so if you want to change a primary color, that's like 400 lines to change it in every single component. And it was just a nightmare. So this was back in the day of like IE11 and, like custom properties were starting to become a thing. So it was very, very early. And so Shoelace 1.0 was very bleeding edge. Can I create something that's very much like Bootstrap, but load it over the CDN, change a couple of custom properties and have, so I get rid of all those extra customizations. And now I just have this whole custom library of components. So it started there. And then fast forward a few more years, IE11 is now dead. Web components, there's a history there, but they were suddenly available in all browsers. And my thought was, can I reinvent this to give people custom HTML elements that, were still a little bit bleeding edge at the time. But if you load this over a CDN, customize a couple custom properties, now everything just works. And the answer was yes. And that was incredible. That was the magic right there. And to what you said, yeah, you can load it in any framework and it just works. You don't need a framework. You can just import this thing and start using your custom HTML elements. So that to me was the magic. And it just spiraled from there. I'd build a couple elements. I think Button was the very first one I ever built as a web component. And it just was like, hey, that's cool. Let me try and input, right? Form controls. And yeah, that works great. Well, what else do we need? And then people just started kind of picking up on that. And they're like, hey, it would be great to have this. And I was like, yeah, that would be kind of fun. So I actually started building this because I wanted to build stuff with Shoelace. And it turns out that people were so into it and they kept requesting things. And the next thing I knew, I'm basically building this for everybody else, which is great because so many people decided that it was fun. It was good. It was easy to use. They liked it. And I think it's almost gotten a little bit out of hand, right? I mean, we got like 50 something components. Now we're teaming up with FontAwesome and we're building this into a whole design system product. It's pretty incredible what we've been able to do with web components in the platform now.
I was looking at the installation and it just looks very much like set base path. It's like second line in the installation guide, right? And with the history that you just said, like it makes a lot of sense. I'm like, oh, cdn.jsdeliver.net / it looks exactly parallel to what we used to do with Bootstrap. And like that history lesson really sets in context the docs.
Absolutely. And so I'm curious, why the name Shoelace? Like, what's the story there?
So it's a play on Bootstrap, and I think only like 10% of people get that.
I did not get that. I get it now.
JS Party listeners, you're in the 10% club. Welcome, congratulations, everyone. I did. That's so interesting. That's actually very smart. A little too smart.
What's up, friends? I'm here with two new friends of mine from Speakeasy, Sagar Bachu, co-founder and CEO, and George Hadar, founding engineer. So for the uninitiated, Speakeasy takes care of the entire SDK workflow to save you and your team significant time, delivering enterprise-grade SDKs to your customers in minutes. You can generate best-in-class SDKs in TypeScript, Python, Go, Java, C#, and even PHP. So, Sagar, what's your excitement level for APIs and this API world we're living in?
I'm super excited about APIs. I think we went through Gen 0 of the API first revolution, and I think we're actually going to a second one now with the tailwinds of the AI ecosystem kind of causing that to be reinvigorated. So yeah, super psyched to be working in this space right now. I think everyone's at a point now where everyone knows about REST APIs and GraphQL APIs and gRPC APIs. And now I think we're actually getting into the second phase of that, which is how do people ship great developer experience in addition to the APIs? And how do we build like truly best-in-class APIs that turn into long-lived infrastructure, right? This is kind of the vision I think that Stripe helped manifest for everyone in the fintech space, which is an API that really sets the bar for developer experience, but also like it's something you can truly rely on, right? It's a true, if you make Stripe a dependency of your company, you can feel confident doing that. And I think that's the part of API development that really excites me.
I agree. That is exciting. So, George, teams who leverage Speakeasy are those who have leaned all the way in on documenting a solid open API spec and mostly want to be hands-off of their SDKs. Is that right?
Precisely. So you're coming to us because you want to be hands-off from that process. You want to put all of your effort into documenting your API, and then you're trusting and relying on great quality tooling to turn that into code and documentation, which is what we're doing for you. You're not meant to change or edit the code because it will be regenerated the next time you change your open API. So you ultimately put it in our hands. Once you've committed the changes to your open API, it's off to the races, and you get a new release of your SDK. You'll get a pull request to review. You will have the opportunity to look at the contents of the code, but quite often you can let it hum along creating SDKs for you or new releases of your SDK every time you change your API.
Very cool. Well, the thing that got me with Speakeasy that really helped me understand it was that, as George said, it is hands-off. You can just focus on documenting your API via the open API spec. And you still have pull requests, you still have visibility. And in fact, they will even hop into pull requests with you to triage any sort of anomalies or issues that come from the SDK generation and improve the back end of Speakeasy to make future releases better for you. I think this is so cool for teams who want to just be hands-off of their SDKs and focus on their product, focus on the core documentation around the open API spec, but still have all that awesome visibility. Okay, so the next step is to go to speakeasyapi.dev. You can start off with one free SDK. That's so cool because you can go there right now and try it out completely free. One free SDK. Let them know the changelog sent you. Let them know JS Party sent you. Once again, speakeasyapi.dev.
How long was the Bootstrap era? Like, if you want to give people some context.
I feel like we're still kind of in it a little bit. We're maybe at the tail end, but
if you don't count WordPress.
I'm sorry. Don't count WordPress. It felt like forever. I don't know exactly how long it was, but I remember it being, I didn't personally jump on the Bootstrap until I think 3.0. That's when things started clicking for me. I was like, this is fantastic, right? jQuery is at its peak. Bootstrap comes out. 2.0, I was like, 3.0 came out. I was like, yeah, I can get behind this. And then I think after that, it sort of started to taper off.
I'm so sorry, like 2008, 2011, like where are we? time-wise?
Yeah, right around in that era. Yeah.
Okay, all the way through 2015, I would say, like less in SaaS.
Give or take.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
And so I think I just kind of want to set some context here before we move on to kind of like the evolution of Shoelace around kind of the usage of web components and how beneficial they really are for people building design systems. So first of all, like as of May 2024, it's like 657 million monthly hits on JS Deliver, which is huge. And that number has just been growing astronomically. Like 2 years ago, you were like 100 million. Now you're like, almost more than 6x that, which is amazing. And like, I don't have the latest stat, but I know up until about a year ago, 17% of page views on Chrome were registering some usage of web components, right? So this is kind of like the sleeper hit on the internet. Like it's actually like much more widely used than people would think, right? Like, and this just goes to show like there's the reality and there's like the tech Twitter bubble and the fad bubble and what like teams at scale are actually choosing to use. And so and Microsoft, like, which is where you actually were, Apple, everybody, right? But they have a fantastic design system built on web components called Fast. And, it's open source and people should check it out. It's pretty rad. But teams at scale are choosing to kind of build it once and use it everywhere, right? Like, which makes sense, just even from like a dollars and cents engineering spend. But like, can you talk to us a little bit about kind of this, like why there's, I don't know, like there's still just, I feel like there's so much, web components still feel so misunderstood in like the wider, like in the thought bubble space, in certain parts of the community. I wouldn't say all, but like, what's the resistance there in your opinion? Like, why are people like struggling to embrace?
Yeah, that's a good question. When I got into building with web components, I was working with a company that we had teams that were building in Angular, teams that were building in Vue, teams that were building vanilla. And we had a design system team that had an Angular JS design system that was obviously getting phased out because Angular JS at the time was kind of dying. And we were like, how can we, do we have to build this 4 different times? That doesn't make sense, right? So web components came in and we're like, we can finally do this. Let's try it. Let's see it. This was very early, like, still kind of tail end of IE 11. Can we do this? And so there was polyfills, there was all sorts of things, and none of the stuff that we need these days, but this was super bleeding edge, super early. And I had a chance to work with all these different teams, right? So I even think we had some React users back then too. And I actually didn't see a whole lot of resistance internally once the value was shown, right? So if one of the problems that we had was, we said, here's our design system. You can use our AngularJS components. If you don't want to use that, you don't have to. So the company was very big on autonomy. Do what you want, but you have to adhere to these design standards. And if you want, use these tools. And so the tools were only Angular. So the folks that didn't want to use the tools could reinvent whatever. That's a lot of duplication of efforts. And at the end of the day, when we were able to give them the same buttons and the same, like all these same components, but they no longer had to create them themselves, they started to realize that value pretty quickly. And when things actually worked, right, we kind of proved that it's possible to do. And I think the greater resistance that you're referring to is the people out in the wild that really, in my experience, they've never really played with them. They've heard a lot of the, custom elements like V0 stuff that, there's a history with web components where Google was trying to push things a little too hard, a little too fast. And the V0 spec, it wasn't well received. They sort of, backpedaled, and then V1 came out and they got a lot more feedback, and things have improved drastically since then. So I think there's still a lot of misconceptions about what custom elements are today. And I actually hate the term web components. I use it because everyone knows what it is, but custom elements really make more sense because you're building custom HTML elements. You're not building React components, Vue components, Angular components. And I think a lot of people still, they don't appreciate, the platform like we, as like an older generation of web developers who grew up with the browser wars, can't appreciate them. Yeah, that's not coming off the way I want it to come off at all.
Yeah.
So I joined Stencil about a year ago, and I recently left Ionic. But when I joined Stencil, I asked my component-y design systems friends. I was like, so I'm working on a web components framework, and they all kind of like go, ooh, and I was like, what? And they were like, web components are dead. I was like, web components are dead? They're like, yeah, they never really lived. And then as I joined Stencil and like saw the people who were using our stuff, I felt the way Amal felt, that we were living in a bit of a maintainers only tech bubble, trying to predict the future of the newest technologies rather than looking at the actual people who are using it, and then also looking at what the technology does or doesn't do. And I pulled up a blog post just now that Brad Frost wrote, and it's called "The Design System Ecosystem," and it's probably the most comprehensive. Have you seen it?
Yeah, Brad I have his books. I really should have his picture in my office, like a fangirl or something. But yeah, no, I really appreciate all his thinking around design systems.
He has an 8 level breakdown of all the different parts, and it really speaks to I don't know, I would say the things that people think are necessary, like the framework specific implementations, as well as the core design system layer, which is where I would say Shoelace fits in. I'm going to use his definition, which contains the common organization-wide UI building blocks for both design and development. And that encompasses things like, how are we going to do theming, accessibility, those kinds of decisions, before eventually getting to the optional technology-specific layers and smart components layers and a bunch of stuff like that. So I don't know. I pasted that link in the chat. I think I have to read this blog post 7 times. It's so dense.
Nice. Yeah, we'll link it in the notes. And can you tell folks what Stencil is for folks who might not be familiar?
Sure. I wanted to ask Corey about this later, probably, which was Stencil versus mitosis versus lit. Those are 3 large web component first. Actually, excuse me, mitosis is not. It was created by the people who created Stencil. But trying to solve the problem of, I would like to write my thing once. Corey was saying we had to re-implement stuff 4 times, right, for every framework. It doesn't make sense. And so those 3 frameworks, lit, mitosis, Stencil, were created to solve that problem using mostly web components, and then mitosis has a little bit of a web component-y past, and they went the opposite way. They were like, we're not going to use web components this time. Anyway, I wanted to ask Corey at some point about those 3 things, maybe at the end.
Yeah. I feel like we know what horse. Well, I mean, maybe we do. Maybe our listeners don't. But so Shoelace is using lit, right? So it's built with lit, which is cool. And we've had Justin Fagnani on the show before, and lit is a little library for helping you write web components. It's super, super thin, super awesome, fantastic, love it. But anyways, so thank you for telling us about Stencil, Jessica. So I think kind of getting back to the evolution of Shoelace here. So now, you have all these low level components like color pickers, checkboxes, buttons, inputs, ranges, etc. All very useful stuff, tabs, tags. And so now tell us about what's happening with WebAwesome.
So I was chilling at home, working, and I get this Twitter DM from a guy called Dave Gandy. And I happen to know Dave, not personally, but I knew of him through FontAwesome, which I had used for years. I was one of the FontAwesome 5 backers on Kickstarter. And it was just like, hey, how's it going? Shoelace looks pretty cool. And so we got to talking and fast forward and I think our visions aligned. I was at the time working at Microsoft on an internal design system, also using web components, and Shoelace was kind of just chugging along as a side project. And Dave offered to generously fly me out to Bentonville and meet with Travis. Both of them are co-founders of FontAwesome, and they're just awesome people. And we realized that our vision for what we could do with web components as a design system, as both an open source product and eventually, a premium offering on top of that, because we have to eat, right? We have to pay the bills. It really aligned, and that's sort of where things all kind of fell together. And so we partnered up and decided that if we want to do, Shoelace right, what are the next steps? Well, first of all, rebranding. That makes sense. Let's keep it on brand. So WebAwesome, FontAwesome. Second of all, we're going to need a team, because it's a lot for one person to just kind of do in their spare time, right? So even if I'm full-time, it's still a lot. So we now have a team of 4 that work full-time on WebAwesome to build it into something that I never could have built completely on my own. And I'm really excited and thrilled that to have this opportunity. And the Kickstarter that we launched that finished up last month, I think it surpassed all of our expectations. We set a goal like 30,000 and it came in at like $720,000 of early backer pledges. So it surpassed like $720,000 in early backer pledges. And so that's a lot of people. That signals to me that want something like this, where you can use, you get this design system that you can use anywhere. And of course we're adding a bunch of stuff on top of that. So
yeah, that was crazy. I mean, so you had this Kickstarter, you were like, all right, our goal is to raise $30,000. And then the community was like, here, take $700,000 more or something like that. Like that was just, it was so amazing to see that.
The date picker was the 700,000 goal, and everybody was just like, more money until we get to date picker. We're not done.
That was the one. Yeah.
We don't want to write that again. Nobody wants to. Yeah. I mean, that's definitely like the one thing I don't know. I cannot wait to like see that land. Like seriously, Corey, that was very strategic of your team. But yeah, so you started working on this full time with kind of the transition of kind of like, so like it was like kind of like an acqui-hire process, I'm assuming, like with Shoelace. And I mean, this is like an open source project that you worked on as a side thing, and then it became really popular and you made an active decision to like, okay, I want to work on this full time. And like the Font Awesome team was like, we want to hire you and like help us kind of evolve the Font Awesome's product offerings, but also just like we can kind of help continue this platform of building like really great free and open source kind of web primitives.
Yeah. When they came to me, it's one of those things where like there's always money involved. People are always trying to, and as a business coming to invest in something like this, that there's a bottom line. And the thing about Font Awesome is these guys are genuine, right? I go out there and I wasn't meeting people for like a business opportunity. I was meeting, brand new friends that were just like this. It's less about that and more about like, we just want to build cool shit together. And we want to do it with people that are like us, that think like us, that have the same beliefs. And it's not so much about the money. That really is a means to an end. Like we need to, to support this team, we obviously need to make a profit at some point, but it's really more about, no, we're going to hire people because they're very talented. They're very awesome. And that's what we've done. We've assembled a team there. I was number 18 in the company, and I think we're now a little bit over 20, but there's not a single person in that company that I wouldn't just hang out with and just have a good time. And like we do that twice a year, and everybody there, I feel like they could just as easily just be friends. Just, we just know this person, and it's just a very unique experience. It's nothing like the corporate environments that I'm used to. Everyone feels genuine. If you need help, someone's there to lend you a hand, ask questions. It's kind of a dream come true in that way.
Sounds like you landed a dream gig. That's really exciting. Congratulations.
Super awesome group of people. Thanks.
So quick question. Does I was going to call it an acquisition. How would you like to call it? The rebranding, merging? How would you describe?
I think rebranding is probably the most appropriate. I mean, it's, you're changing the name there to something that's definitely a lot more on brand. So yeah, rebranding is probably good. So
the one FAQ on the Kickstarter that makes me curious of the structure of the company is, what if I'm already a Font Awesome Pro subscriber? That FAQ. And it says, if you're already a Font Awesome Pro subscriber, and if your rewards include a year of Font Awesome Pro, your subscription can be extended by a year. Does that mean that the whole model of like every company that's currently using Font Awesome is going to be affected by this awesome? Oh gosh, I used awesome as the adjective.
We like that word, so you can use it as much as you want.
Okay. Is it going to be affected? Like, what happens to existing users?
So you're saying if they backed the Kickstarter and they were an existing customer, basically, right?
I'm just saying, like, if they're an existing customer, period, how is the rebrand going to affect them for Font Awesome Pro people?
Okay, so there's two separate products, though.
Okay.
So there's going to be Font Awesome as a separate product, and then Web Awesome as a separate product. So
okay, cool. I wasn't straight on that on the way that the rebrand like affected both sides of the business. Cool.
Yeah, maybe we should do a better job of clarifying that, because that's a good signal that maybe we weren't as clear as we should have been.
Yeah, just in the FAQ, it sounds like the whole thing is smushing together in the rebrand.
Okay, no, good to know. I appreciate the feedback.
I'm so sorry.
No, you're fine.
So in terms of like the business model, and by the way, like just congrats on landing at a place that has found a way to do open source sustainably. Like that's huge, you know, and it's also just very impressive. And yeah, and I was reading somewhere on their website, on Font Awesome's website, that since they became a commercial entity, like they've increased their open source offering by like 300% or something like that. Like that's just also, you know, yay. So that being said, like what is the model like with Web Awesome? Like what if I'm a paid subscriber, what do I get?
Yeah, so clearly open source is important. And like you said, the Font Awesome side of things has increased the free offering significantly. One of the things Dave likes to say is we're one of our own best competitors. So the more we add to free, you know, the more we kind of, but for Web Awesome, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to continue to add a lot of free things. Just from the Kickstarter stretch goals, we're looking at 14 new free components that we're going to be adding. So that's, we have our work cut out for us, but we're busy on doing those things. And the premium package, we have so much good stuff coming, and a lot of it's already been built, but we have a themer that basically lets you just go in there and turn some knobs and just create a whole theme to match your existing brand. There's a lot of details that are involved in that I don't want to bore you with too much, but you can pretty much tweak anything that you want from that and then go back in later and change things. So if you create a site today and you're using, you know, the Web Awesome components and whatnot, you can go back later. Think CSS Zen Garden, right? Again, I'm aging myself, but you can once again go back in and change those knobs and not have to rebuild your website, which is something that people seem to be doing a lot these days. Like, oh, we need a new website. Well, let's just rebuild it. Wait a minute. Why don't we retheme it? So that's I think the most exciting aspect of it to me. And then there's so much. There's the pro components that were, you know, I think there's whole businesses around things like data grid and charting libraries and stuff like that. So these are some of the things that we're going to be building into pro. These are things that you'd probably be paying for anyways. We're not putting, you know, inputs and radios and checkboxes behind a pro label. We're giving you a lot of really good stuff for free, but we're giving you the stuff you'd probably be paying for anyways at the premium level.
Yeah. Like AG Grid. AG Grid is an entire company built around the data grid. And you guys are bundling it in. Same thing with charting library. Does AG have a charting library? Do you know, Corey?
I don't know off the top of my head now.
It's okay. But there are many paid charting libraries. So entire companies spun out about these components.
Yeah, I know I've bought a number of high charts licenses over the years, and it's now here we are building charts. So
Yeah, no, I mean, it's like watch out world, you know, and I don't think any of those are built with web components. So like just in terms of extensibility and compatibility and all that other stuff, like it's it's definitely very exciting to see you all entering that space. And just also like regarding theming, like one of the really cool things about what I really love about Shoelace, which is the root dependency of Web Awesome, right, is that like there's this, you know, separation that you get between how something should function and how something should look, right? And I think, you know, theming is that, like, that's the magic sauce. Like you can have, you know, everyone has their own buttons, their own menus, their own this, their own that, but functionally these things should all work the same, right? Just makes sense for users. Like users shouldn't have to learn how to use drop downs, you know, every time they use a new website, right? So I just love that. So kind of like getting into kind of the lower level primitives for the library. Actually, you tell me, Corey, should we stop calling this Shoelace and start calling it Web Awesome? Like, I don't know. I've always known it as a Shoelace. So, you know, you tell me how we should be referring to it for the rest of the show.
Yeah, I mean, we're officially Web Awesome. We still maintain Shoelace too. We're going to keep maintaining that for a little while, but yeah, Web Awesome is not yet released. We are looking at next month for a pre-release of, like, I call it 3.0 alpha for the early backers that were on Kickstarter. But yeah, we're all in on Web Awesome at this point.
But in terms of like how the API should function for, you know, people who were on Shoelace that were on, you know, on version 2, which is what's out right now. And like, let's say when 3 comes out, like functionally things should still work the same, right? Like theming should still work the same, you know, event management, like setting attributes, whatever it is, like all of that should still generally work the same, right?
Mostly, yeah. I mean, we're going to change tags. SL doesn't make sense in a WebAwesome world, so we're going to change the HTML tags. So SL button becomes WA button. There are a few things that we're going to be breaking, but for very good reason. When Shoelace first came out, for example, form-associated custom elements, that wasn't the thing. We didn't have those APIs. So, in fact, my partner who works on the dev side at WebAwesome, Connor Rogers, he just wrapped up finishing a migration from our own bespoke form submission library, if you will, to form associated custom elements. So there's things that do have to change to basically align better with the platform. Because again, we're bleeding edge. Some of these things didn't exist in the past. There are a few other things that we're breaking for very good reason, but for the most part, we're being very cautious and we're being very careful not to, pull the rug out from under people. So if you're using Shoelace today, a pivot to WebAwesome Free is not going to be that difficult for you. And we're going to, as we go through this, we have a pretty extensive change log that says, hey, this is something that's broken. Moving from here, here's how you update. And none of it's very difficult so far. So I think that'll be the case as we get closer to an alpha launch.
That makes sense. Are you going to ship like some helpers to kind of help people migrate, like AST based, transforms or something like that? Is that something that y'all are thinking about?
I think we're going to see what our early backers, what friction they have. If we see a lot of trouble in a specific area, we'll address that. But we're joining two worlds. We have a lot of Fauna Awesome customers who have never seen or heard of Shoelace, and now they're all, WebAwesome, what's this? So we have a ton of new users, but I still care a lot about the open source users who were Shoelace from the start. There's a lot of folks who have just been there for years, and I don't want to upset them. So I kind of want to hear what they have to say before we're a small team, so we want to be careful where we dedicate our effort to. So yeah, if we see friction, we'll address it.
Doing AST transforms is not an easy thing to do well. It's easy to do it like on one code base, but getting it to scale up correctly, I would not jump headfirst into that unless people really need it.
Yeah, and especially since a lot of our users are CDN folks, and so that there's no build step there. So we would, I don't even know what that would look like, but I think the key is probably going to be mostly documentation first, and if we still have trouble, then we'll see what we can do if we have to backpedal an API or something like that. But there's a lot of unknowns.
You make some really good points there, and it just goes to show my own bias, right? Because you're kind of optimizing for no build step with Shoelace and WebAwesome. Like you just add this, here, drop these tags into your HTML doc and you're good to go, right? And that's the world that we were in many years ago, and hopefully the world that's going to be coming back to us in the future, right? We're boomeranging back to this kind of, hopefully this world where we're trying to kind of, if we can avoid build steps where we can, I think that's where things seem to be heading anyways. We've paid the complexity cost a little bit. No, I mean, I think build steps are still important.
I disagree strongly.
So, yeah, we can agree to disagree here. But what I'm saying is that we've paid the cost here with having kind of build steps and all these complicated intermediaries that we have with writing code and shipping code, right? And so I think people are kind of looking to compress that, and that's not the no compiler trend. I think has kind of been a slow one, but it's been there's been this what's the snowball effect? I feel like slow snowball effect there.
People are discussing it, I would say, and then I'm very much on you will always probably want a build step. For reasons,
same here.
At least one kind, browser list would be my number one thing for a CSS library, right? Something to polyfill, selectively, I think is a really heavy thing for a CSS library. But anyway, if you want more information, I would say.
But what if you could have both?
If you could have both?
I mean, so that's what we're so you have people who do want that simple, just copy and paste, whether they're prototyping or shipping that to production, it doesn't matter. So we want people to be able to just get out of the box, start using it and not worry about it. So that's where the CDN comes in. We have an autoloader. If you're using 5 tags, it'll just load those 5 things. If you're using 10, it'll load those 10. But then there's also the NPN installation where you can install it. You can run it through your build step. Your bundler will tree shake. We actually offer both. So you can have the best of both worlds. And I think that's important because, you can't please everybody, but we have, another thing that we like to say is put the pain on those who can bear it.
Okay.
That's actually not the full quote. That's a paraphrasing of it. But the point is, we are in a better position to do the hard stuff one time and let the users do the easy stuff, right? So we'll handle all that. If you want to do it with CDN, fine, we can offer that. If you want to do it with a bundler, fine, we'll offer that too. Our build step handles that. So you can choose to either have a build step or to not have a build step. So like I said, best of both worlds. We want to accommodate everybody. We don't want to say, hey, we only offer a CDN. You're stuck with that. Just use that. Like, no, because there's some good tooling enhancements that can come when you import an NPM module and you get TypeScript and you get all these cool things. Like we have a custom element manifest file that you can get in there and link it up to VS Code that you get autocomplete as you start typing in tags. So there's a lot of cool stuff that we do. You don't necessarily get that over the CDN, but it's there if you choose to go a little bit further.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And in the modern world, I think you have to do both things. We've seen recently people don't even support CDN install, right? Most everybody assumes you're using NPM and that you're building it yourself. And I think you want the best of both worlds. That's super smart.
Yeah, I think for me, this is just because there's not every single organization has this like group of world-class JavaScript developers that can like be dedicated to like do all the crazy complex things. And like keeping up with JavaScript build tooling is kind of like a full-time job at large organizations. You know, it's like whole teams dedicated to that, right? So what I'm saying is that like I don't think build steps like minification, all the stuff to kind of like optimize your code, I don't think those are going away. But I think with type annotations coming like native to the language, with all the improvements with CSS, like all the things that you used to need like something like Sass to do, you can now just do with native CSS, whether it's nesting, variables, all this stuff. There's just kind of a shift for kind of the platform is catching up, right? So we can reduce complexity. And I think we should try to be reducing complexity where we can, because yeah, this stuff takes time. Like it's time, resources, it's a lot of things, right? So yeah, I'd love to shave down on that complexity where we can. It also makes it like just a more inclusive ecosystem that like where people you don't need a PhD in dev tooling to like be productive, right? Like, which I feel like for a while you did, we're getting better. We have better abstractions with dev tools now, but like, remember the days of Webpack config, or even taking it further.
Should I use Gulp? Should I use Grunt? Should I use Webpack? Like, what are all these things?
Oh my God. Yeah. So many,
It's painful.
Yeah. And I think for me, what you reminded me of with kind of this like transition to Font Awesome is like, you're bridging beyond the world of NPM in the sense that like you're now connecting with a whole class of developers that are creating for the web in a wider array of like, it's a wider stack, people who are building WordPress sites, people who are building like all the things. Like it's like you're outside of the NPM bubble when it comes to like web apps. Does that make sense, Corey? Like that's pretty cool that you're inheriting this huge customer base now.
Yeah, and something that you said a little bit earlier about things take time. That's a really good point. And I think that goes back to an even earlier question about the whole web components, like how are these received? CSS is a great example. Like we have nesting in all major browsers now, right? Maybe a little too evergreen for certain production things, but we're so close. In another year or two, it's going to be a non-issue. And, custom properties they're not the same, but they, in many ways are better than Sass variables. So I've actually been Sass free for years, right? Ever since I've been in the web component world, I was like, I just don't need that anymore. I would love nesting, but I'm willing to give up that extra build step and that Sass overhead to just use pure CSS again. And I'm pretty happy with it these days. And I think people have been pretty receptive to that. They're very excited to see a lot of the things landing. There's math functions in CSS. There's so much going on there. We have grid now. But I think web components are like that too, and they're just much more of a complex beast, and they're not as well used and known. But as people start to realize these are platform things, these aren't just like, this is not just magic. This is not another framework we're throwing at you. I think we're going to see the same thing where people are so open to CSS, the modern CSS, they're going to start becoming more open to modern solutions like web components, custom elements, and they're going to start feeling more comfortable with them. They just really haven't had that exposure like they do with something like CSS.
I've also been Sass free for years.
I feel this feels like some kind of a Sass Anonymous meeting, It's like I too have been Sass free for 6 months, It's like, but
got my coin.
Right, exactly. That's pretty amazing.
Okay, join Towery's Dev Tools Premium waitlist. It is ready for you right now. If you're building with Towery or Towery, depends on how you say it, this might be the best news you hear all week. DevTools Premium is right around the corner, and here's what's coming. A native desktop app built with Towery, first-class support for Towery 2.0, powerful collaboration features, usable as an embedded drawer in a Towery app, or popped out for a bigger view, just like you love in Chrome DevTools. The Crab Nebula team is even experimenting with more advanced features like record replay of debugging sessions, and it's not just about finding and fixing issues, it's about understanding, optimizing, and perfecting the application development process. So join the waitlist today. Go to crabnebula.dev/devtools. Again, crabnebula.dev/devtools.
So we can't get into like, I guess, the specifics of the API interface, I guess, for this 3.0 release, because we haven't been there yet. So we'll kind of reference 2.0 because we know there'll still be a lot of overlap. So you support theming and like customization and all this stuff. Another really cool thing is that specifically this is for the React, for folks who are using React and who are also using Shoelace, hopefully in the future WebAwesome. You created a set of React components, like just simple wrappers. And I'm just curious, was that because of like limited web component support, or like why not just use the custom elements directly in JSX?
So that was because of limited React support, yes.
Okay.
Which has been solved in React 19.
Yes.
Finally. We were kind of promised that, I feel, since 16, and they kept kicking the can, but it's finally coming. So that's a huge, huge step forward. But the other thing is, React users sort of live in a bit of a different world. Everything just looks a lot different. And so the wrappers give them a more idiomatic experience. They can just use them as, JSX components or React components, whatever you want to call them. And they just feel a little bit more natural. So I don't think we're going to be taking those away anytime soon. I'd like to think that, a few years down the road, maybe, React 23, 4, 5, maybe we'll finally get rid of those because custom elements, they're becoming more ubiquitous. People are more familiar with them. There are little differences that would exist for a React user that might be a little bit more uncomfortable. So until those get ironed out, I think we're going to continue offering those. The work's done. There's minimal effort to maintain that. So there's no reason why we would just take that away.
But like for Vue and Angular, folks can just like drop in the custom elements and that's it. Like it's just everything's turnkey, right?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, like with Vue, there's like, for example, binding in Vue, native form controls, it's a one directive thing. And with custom elements, you have to have that event listener. So for example, we have that Shoelace module, which we need to get translated over to WebAwesome, where you can import that and you can use our custom directive for simpler binding for custom elements in Vue. So there's minor things like that we still put a little bit of effort into making them a little bit easier for folks to use, but we may have some magic to make that just work with WebAwesome. So if that doesn't work, we're going to offer the custom directives, but if that does work, then great, things will just work.
And Angular, I'm hoping that this is truly turnkey, because I know they do have like built-in support for custom elements. So please tell me that's the case. Is there any heavy lifting that Angular users have to do to start integrating this?
You're asking the wrong person. I don't use Angular. I haven't used it in a long time. But
there's support on your website for Angular.
Yeah, there is. And so that page was contributed, but no.
Okay.
I think most of it works. I'm not going to try to flub through the details of the few things that are like iffy. They do work. They just don't necessarily, not every piece of it connects exactly like an Angular component would. And so those details I'd have to get back to you on.
Okay. Yeah. I'm looking at the configuration. Yeah. There's still a little bit you have to do, but I think once that's done, it's plug and play after that. So what happens with the synthetic events layer in React? Like, how do you manage that crazy eventing, the mishmash between like events that are coming from these like native web components and the world of React that's working in synthetic events? Like, how do you handle that?
So for the wrappers, you mean?
Yeah,
because they pretty much do that. Yeah, they act as a bridge, and I can't take credit for the actual work that goes on under those wrappers. That was all the Lit Labs team who created that package to just do that mapping for us, and I'm very thankful to them because as a small team, if we had to maintain something like that, I don't know that we'd have that support.
Okay, got it. That makes sense. So like you're using the lit to React kind of wrapper under the hood. Okay, that makes sense. And so like what happens with something like Solid? So they're using JSX, but they translate those into DOM elements. Like, is it just, do things just work?
I hear very few complaints, and I know Solid's getting pretty popular out there. I haven't heard any complaints. Again, I wish I had more time to actually get down and build random apps with all these different frameworks. There's just too many to keep track of. So what we try to do is be very responsive. If we hear an issue, something like that comes up, then we'll kind of dive into it. And that's something that Connor does a really good job of. He just loves digging into those hard to reach issues. So if anyone does have a problem with a specific framework, please do just post it to currently our Shoelace issues board. Pretty soon it'll be our WebAwesome issues board, and we will definitely get it addressed. We've worked with a few different frameworks kind of passively to address some of these things that weren't maybe a little bit rough. Maybe the edges were a little bit rough, and we work with them to smooth things out the best we can. And nobody's not been receptive to, hey, we want to get this to work better with custom elements, right? This isn't a Shoelace thing. This is really like a platform thing. If we can work with a framework to improve their support for custom elements, that's a net positive for everybody. And so there's, so far we've only met great people in that regard.
Yeah. I'm like, do we want to go back to the stencil versus lit versus mitosis? I've never even mitosis. Yeah. I've never even like heard of mitosis. So I'm excited to like learn about it.
Sure.
Yeah.
I can give some more backstory on the other ones. So at least the stencil mitosis thing. So Builder.io made Quick, but also made mitosis. And the two of the founders of mitosis were Adam and Manu, and they built Stencil at Ionic. So they left Ionic to go to Builder.io, and then they solved the same problem in a different way, and that was mitosis. So history lesson. But anyway, Corey, what have you been paying attention to in like alternate implementations of this write once, run anywhere web component problem space?
Well, it's funny because Shoelace 2 was actually written in Stencil, and down the road it switched over to Lit, and there's a post out there that you can search for and read if you're interested about that. But what I wanted to do is, for me, Stencil was a little bit of magic. I wanted to be a little bit closer to the platform. I started writing my own web component based class and turned into this little micro library. It's like, I want this, all these features. I want declarative templates, and I want, there's a whole bulleted list of things that I wanted to build. And so I started putting those in there. And what I realized is I ended up with something that was about the same size as Lit, wasn't nearly as good as Lit. And I was like, you know what? Why don't I just use Lit? Because I want to build components. I want to build this design system starter kit. I don't want to build a Lit or a Stencil. And so that's where I realized this is dumb. Let's just focus on what I care about and get rid of that. And let's just go with the simplest thing. And at the time, there's hybrids. Fast was there, but I think it was still kind of early-ish. But Lit was just the most obvious choice. And so I've kind of made good friends with that community and kind of just stuck with it. I don't see a big reason to change, but there are some pretty cool libraries. If you're a React developer, I think Atomico is a more of a newer web component library where it uses a more React-y kind of API. So there's a lot of cool, I want to call them libraries, that you can use to create custom elements with these days. So yeah, I haven't had any experience with mitosis though, personally. Sorry.
It's fine. It's a pretty cool concept. I feel like it's but there's also TanStack, right, which is pure vanilla. And then thin wrappers. And I feel like mitosis is closer to that implementation-wise. But yeah, it's very compiler-based. They launched a website yesterday, which I found like kind of interesting. I still am hesitant to use it in prod. For people's like nervousness on like how prod-ready do I think it is, I would not use mitosis in production. But I find the website that shows like different compilations, write it in React, see it in Vue, see it in Angular, write it in Angular, see it in React, see it in Vue. That I find interesting. But again, it's a compiler. It's not a standard, not a platform standard that you can trust to be production ready.
Interesting. And what's their goal? Do you know, what, I'm just curious, who's the intended user base, I guess?
I feel like the intended user base would be like TanStack, instead of being written in vanilla, would be written in React, and then cross-compiled at Tanner's build step. Or you have a company that has really strong React developers, and then there's one team that is really strong Angular developers, and you would like to have a design system that works in both. You would do it at the compile step instead of using the platform. It's attractive to some people. Yeah.
It's interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. No, I think it's always really nice to see people exploring different avenues. I think there's always gold that comes out of it regardless, right? So that's very, very cool. Thanks for sharing. So yeah, so Corey, I guess what do you feel like is a big takeaway that you want to kind of share with folks around using WebAwesome in terms of it bringing value into their stacks, and also just soothing over a lot of the common problems that we all have when designing web interfaces?
Yeah. For WebAwesome Free, there's kind of no excuse. There's no monetary barrier. Why build your own buttons, right? We do the hard work, and we give you a very easy way, a good API to theme them. And if you want to go with Pro, you'll get a lot more. You'll get those components that, again, many of which are their own separate businesses out there. We're building something that we want not to lock behind a paywall, but we want people to just use it and have fun with it. And then, hey, support us if these things are helpful to you, if these advanced components and these advanced, theming mechanisms and other things that we're adding on top of it are useful, for a ridiculously low price. I think it's not uncommon to hear that FontAwesome is underpriced for what they offer, and WebAwesome is following the same path. We're probably one of the better values for the things that you're going to get. That's what we're doing. We're building these things for you to just get on there and just use. And if you want more, awesome, be part of that cause. And I don't have a solid oh wow, the kind of what I want, but
value prop. It's okay. We that's we are workshopping it, so it hasn't even been released yet. So
yeah, I would say there's free versions of WebAwesome, there's paid versions of WebAwesome. Go out and try it. If you want the paid components, if you fall in love with the button, consider the chart. If you fall in love with the form, consider the chart. Consider the data grid, the heavy stuff.
Yeah, I'm not a good salesman. I'm not a good marketing person, and whenever I start to sound salesman-y, I just feel oh, this is just so lame. But the reality is, we don't want to be that company. We want to be that open source company first. And it's well, this is a means to an end. How do we get from here to there and continue doing this? And we're building this stuff for our users. That they're the reasons we exist. They're the reasons we're going to continue to exist. And we just want to build really good, efficient, well-performing, accessible things that you can use. We are building, I can't say the L word. We are building the small toy bricks that you use to build much bigger sets out. You know what I mean?
Okay.
We're building those things so you can build the bigger sets. And that's what we enjoy doing. And so if we do that right, you can just pick that up and let me ask you a question. If you're building a website from scratch or an application from scratch, is the first thing that you do to think about well, what color should my buttons be, right? No, you just want to throw buttons in there and worry about all that stuff later. So if we give you all those pieces and you start assembling them, and then you can go back later and start changing those themes and all that, worry about all the other stuff later. The first thing they tell you to do if you're creating a startup is build an MVP, make it work, right? Who cares what it looks like? It can look like complete garbage. If you can make it work, that's your first step. So we're giving you those blocks for free. And you can do all that with those, and then you can add all these other layers later on, which I think is kind of unique. You don't have to worry about building all these pieces of it. You just put them all together, and then next thing you know, you have something functional. You can worry about how it looks. You can start customizing. You can just build on top of that. So I don't know. It's just I genuinely love building these things, and the team that we've assembled is just as nerdy about that. Like, this is the stuff that we love to do, and it's probably very boring to most people out there. This is not a conversation I'd have with a stranger on a plane. You're like, well, what do you do for a living? Yeah. But it's stuff that we really nerd out about and we enjoy doing. And for the folks out there that find it useful, we appreciate that. We appreciate the opportunity to serve you and to give you all these cool tools to build things with.
My only advice to you all would be, my unsolicited, advice would be, like, drop the free. Like, I would say it's WebAwesome and WebAwesome Pro. You know what I mean? I think you drop free. Like, I think you want to build branding around and get traction around WebAwesome. And I mean, you already have so much traction around Shoelace, and now you're now opening this up to like an even bigger community, which is, exciting. But I would drop free. That's my unsolicited advice, Corey.
I like that.
I think that's like a leaky abstraction. So you guys can use that internally as, people who work there. But
yeah, I think for the Kickstarter, we definitely used free and pro to differentiate. But I like that. I'm going to bring that to the table and see if that's something that we can do. Because like, if WebAwesome free, it just sounds like, I don't know, like, oh, I'm getting like a half-hearted version of it. Like, yeah, it's too long. But yeah, I'll bring that back to him and see what we can do about that.
It's great. And now I just want an attribution credit on the website. Okay, just kidding.
Yeah. Just kidding. Free license.
No, for life. Just kidding. No,
we'll give you a free license to free. That I can commit to right now.
Oh, awesome! Great. That's great. I'll take it. That's great. No, Corey, thank you so much. We're excited to kind of see this thing launch and get some legs, and we'll have to have you back to kind of talk through some of the details for some of these fancy new components. I can't believe you're making a date picker and a
data grid.
Oh my gosh.
Date picker.
Yeah.
I'm so there.
Yeah, you'll have to tell us about all the pain points of making a standardized date picker that works everywhere, that's responsive and accessible and all the things. Like,
I'm super stoked.
That feels like God's work in some ways, So.
Bless.
Yeah, and date pickers are complicated, right? Because there's date picker and then there's date range picker, and so there's definitely a lot of details that we have to iron out there. But like I said, we have our work cut out for us, but we are not averse to challenges, and this is what we do. If it was easy, we probably wouldn't be doing it.
Yeah, that's right. That could be your like sub tagline,
If it was easy, wouldn't be doing it.
We wouldn't be doing it. Right, exactly. So we're doing the hard work for you, See, we come up with like all these fun taglines for WebAwesome.
You already know how hard this is.
Yeah. Oh, I love
That's
that.
the funny thing. Like, if you sat down and said, like, I'm going to hire like a designer and a developer to develop a single component, like, ask anybody who's a potential customer of WebAwesome, say, how much would that actually cost you to get that? And then not only to just build it, but then to maintain it, to write the tests for it, etc. And I think that you'll find that, wow, I'm getting like 50 plus components, plus all these pro things, plus the themer. It's like, to me, that's a no brainer. Like, the value is there. So that's why I say when I say we're probably underpriced, I think we're definitely underpriced. And I just hope other people see that, because you get a lot for free, but for what we're asking for pro, you get so much more. So
yeah, there we go. And I
hope everyone likes it.
No better way to end it. So again, congrats. Thank you for making web components cool and functional and useful and bringing utilitarian value to them. It's really exciting. And yeah, just good luck on the open source, sustainable open source business model. It's just very promising and it's very encouraging, and hope other libraries can follow suit, and follow your footsteps in that way. And yeah, Jess, any closing thoughts from you before we wrap?
The sheer number of these components, like, oh man, I can't even count easily. That's why I haven't said it the whole show. You guys are doing amazing.
Yeah.
I'm super stoked.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Seriously.
Appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you.
We have a lot more to add, so.
So where can folks get in touch with you and also just learn more and follow along with the project's progress and all the things?
So if you go to webawesome.com, that's going to direct you currently to the Kickstarter page, but in the near future, that's going to direct you to the project's website. And if you want to follow me personally, it's at @CLavisca on Twitter, and I will continue to call it Twitter until I'm dead. But yeah, that's probably the best place. So appreciate it. Thanks again for having me.
And if they want to come visit you in New Hampshire, where like, is that
it's
an
a
open
small
invitation?
state, Yeah,
can
just,
we burn
just
Can they come and burn a tire with you? Is that?
Oh my God!
Wow. Okay, we're going to circle back to that.
Whoa!
Listen. You guys are taking this as an insult. It's not an insult. This is just par
culture
for the course. Yes, thank you.
We love all our New England siblings, all those sibling states, especially the ones that are not as. No, I'm not going to say it. No, we love not Massachusetts.
Not as liberated.
We just don't like the way y'all drive up here. So if you could stop, being maniacs on the highway, that would be great.
We are absolutely maniacs on the highway. I have to. You know what? I'll take it. I'll take it. I'm not even going to try to argue that. I have to, like, every time I'm driving in the Midwest where there's sane roads and grids or whatever, and I'm like the maniac that's like doing UEs or doing crazy things. It's like, people are just like, what is wrong with you? I'm like, don't blame me. I grew up driving in Boston. Like, just don't blame me, like blame Boston. It's like, you're not aggressive. You're not moving. That's the way it is.
Austin is insane, by the way. Oh, we can let you go. Yeah, so I just started driving down here, and what's crazy is everybody goes about 10 to 15 miles below the speed limit. It's insane. I've never lived in a place. Corey, you're nodding. Have you driven down here?
Where's down here? Because I think I know.
Oh, Austin.
In Austin, yeah. So I lived in Round Rock for about 2 years, actually.
Yeah, I'm like 15 minutes from Round Rock.
Yeah. So no, I think you have two types of drivers there, the ones you're describing, and then you have the people from Mass that are also on the road there, which but it's definitely interesting. Like, people actually, like, they'll stop and let you pull out. They'll be like, yeah, no, go ahead. They'll even block traffic. They'll stop, block the traffic behind them, and they'll be like, yeah, no, go ahead. They're so friendly. But it's a different world.
It's wild. I saw a semi truck weave like it was a Corvette. And usually there's like, it was bizarre. And he weaved through traffic, freaking 18-wheeler. And I was like, what in the, usually there's like a sticker, call about my driving, no sticker. There was no sticker there. You did not want to. Yeah, I was freaking out. I was like, what is happening?
Anyways, oh gosh. All right. Well, next week on US Driving Weekly, we can just compare driving habits across the United States of America. Thank you again, Corey. It's a pleasure having you. Can't wait to see all the awesome things that you guys release. And yeah, that's it for this week, folks. Have a good one, y'all. Cheers.
Is JS Party for this week. Thanks for hanging with us. If you're new to the pod, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a thing. You can find all the ways at jsparty.fm. Email, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pocket Cast, Overcast, or direct via that sweet RSS feed. And if you've been listening for a while, leave us a 5-star review so we can reach more curious web devs like yourself. Thanks once again to our partners at Fly.io, to our Beat Freakin' residents, Breakmaster Cylinder, and to our friends at Sentry. Use code CHANGELOG when you sign up for a Sentry team plan to save 100 smackers. That's United States dollars if you aren't familiar with the colloquialism. Next up on the pod, the Spring React Game Jam is right around the corner, so Nick and I are talking to another past winner, this time focused on building 3D games in the browser. Stay tuned right here. We'll drop that episode into the feed next week.